Alright, welcome to NewInvaders issue 4, part 1 of a two-part story called Blood. We have a cover by Colin Scott, Baroness with a very, very Sal Buscema face. Incredible Sal Buscema likeness. I mean likeness to his art, not likeness to him. He doesn't look like this. He is pretty hard, but he doesn't look like this. This series is a favourite of mine, a passion project that maybe wasn't evaluated as fairly as it deserved at the time. But I think the more someone comes back to this, the greater it is. Each time, I appreciate it. And I think the name Baroness Blood comes from these recap pages. Time for a very brief, quick recap. That Jack Staff miniseries is the majority of our backstory. This one is as close to a sequel that a story can get without having the number 2 after it. After that, the Dracula Queen, Baroness, open brackets, Blood, close brackets, appeared in the first story arc of this series. Now she was affiliated with a modern day incarnation of the Super Axis team from Invaders comics, a troupe of Nazi villains, some of them survivors of the original 1940s team. Baroness was an obvious foil to Fire Spit, having been responsible for the death of her son, and now having given birth to what is Fire Spit's grandson. I think that earlier confrontation might have been purely there to give Fire Spit the knowledge she has a grandson out there. So here we have Baroness. She has gathered a new cult of followers. I don't know how. After she let all the others die, I don't know why anyone would think following her has its benefits. And she has actually adopted a lot of Nazi rhetoric now. In the original miniseries, she was using Nazi language to refer to Draculas. She would refer to Draculas as the master race and pure. But now she is full on Roger Waters in the Wall, or Roger Waters in 2024. Are there any queers in the audience tonight? Get them up against the wall. Here is the baby, Barry Jr. To talk about the art, I should say, this artist saw one of my videos about this series, and any bias that might offer should be acknowledged. But this story maybe has his weakest art in the series. The colouring of this opening scene, it was going for summer and it didn't quite work. And for me, the reason it didn't work is the two tones, the bass and then the shading. It looks very bitmap. I don't know how else to describe it. It looks very bitmap. There is also some real rush jobs in this, it seems. A lot of absentee backgrounds. And that maybe explains why we had a fill-in artist for issue 6. Despite these criticisms, I am a big fan of the art, especially in issues 1, 2 and 3, and 7, 8 and 9. The art is great in those. And I'm not saying the art in this is absolutely rubbish either. There are just certain bits where it doesn't feel like it was as delicately handled as it was in those other issues. Before I even get to explain this version of Invaders, we have a gay pride parade. A terrible gay pride parade because their banner is fucking embarrassing. It uses the default Arial font with all caps. I wouldn't even feel proud of my banner, let alone my sexuality. At this gay pride event in London is retired wartime hero Dynamite Destroyer, an ally to the Invaders and gay lover to the World War II Jack Staff. I will be explaining him, and it is fucking complicated, but before we indulge in that, here are some leather daddies. If you are disgusted by homosexuality, you might get some joy out of the gay pride event being attacked by weather controlling Draculas who were confirmed to have murdered almost everyone there. They are the bad guys. The Draculas, they are the bad guys. We get a little bit of action with Dynamite Destroyer. We get to see him fight some Draculas. Dynamite Destroyer slaying some Draculas. And I actually really like Dynamite Destroyer. And getting a scene of him in action, very welcome. Even if he loses, he gets beaten by the Nazi Draculas. So Dynamite Destroyer. Dynamite Destroyer is a Goldie Age character. First introduced in Mystic Comics 4 or 6, I don't remember. But thanks to Roger Thompson, this character was retconned and retconned again, and so now he has an incredibly impossible to really explain history. I am going to try and do my best to present Dynamite Destroyer as a character you can understand. In Invaders 13, the Invaders battle a team called the Crusaders, who were analogues to the Quality Comics Freedom Fighters, later owned by DC. They were being misled and lied to and manipulated into fighting the Invaders. The one member of that team that mattered, the breakout star maybe, was the Doll Man analogue. This is Dynamite Destroyer. He has shrinking powers, and he was trapped at that size. He saved King George, and then also exposed and rebelled against the Crusaders and Allah. Afterwards, he kept hanging around with the Invaders. It turns out he was Jack Staff's friend, later retconned into gay lover. But he had been captured by Nazis and developed amnesia and forgot who he was. This is where things get dicey because I am going to be using cutaways that don't actually match what I am saying, but they can represent my simplified version of Dynamite Destroyer's history. With his memories back, he adopted the Dynamite Destroyer identity in lieu of his Dollman cosplay. He would fight alongside the Invaders every so often, but would also turn down joining the team, preferring to fight the Axis in his own way. If membership on the Invaders was anything like Avengers membership, Dynamite Destroyer would surely count as an honorary member. Dynamite Destroyer returned in Thunderbolts, now leading the V-People, a secret group that safeguard the planet from terror threats. He has led this clandestine council for decades. I've realised I don't actually need to summarise as much of these Thunderball stories as I thought. He is in a lot of Thunderballs, and he even leads another team of heroes from time to time. He co-stars in the V-Man miniseries, and then again its follow-up. It is there where we find out that he and Jack Staff were gay. Another actual gay character Fabio Nicieza wrote. But no, he needs to lie about how he was always writing Juggernaut as being gay and Snowman as being gay. Dynamite Destroyer eventually retired from the V-People. He had felt that he had become too morally compromised, and so left it in charge of the original Human Fire, who he considered a better man than he had ever been. Do you get it? Because the original Human Fire is a synthetic. The V-People, they get plenty of mention in this series, but they are pretty much forgotten about when Fabio Nicieza is done writing Thunderbolts. And don't go rushing to tell me how Dynamite Destroyer was in recent Captain America comics. I know, that one, I know. I know that they pointlessly killed him off because Marvel fridged their gays to pretend that comics were always homophobic and never had any gay characters until 2013. And Robert Kirkham wrote a series, but it wasn't Dynamite Destroyer. It was the pre-retcon Golden Age Dynamite Destroyer, a different person. The Draculas left Dynamite Destroyer alive because they knew he would contact the original Human Fire, who is currently operating with this new team of Invaders. They are basically the same concept as the V-People, a secret group proactively protecting the world. This modern-day iteration of Invaders was brought together by Plastic Man, a character who in the past had been the default stays back at base monitoring things character for the Invaders. He has tricked or manipulated a lot of ad members into joining his crusade. But characters like the original Human Fire, Fire Spit, even the new Jack Staff, they are there because they don't quite trust Plastic Man. They are more concerned about what this team could do without them and their challenging of things. This story sensibly pares down its cast to the characters essential to the story being told. Fire Spit, Jack Staff, the original Human Fire, and then his new protege, Tonta, a girl version of Tonto. Very good choice. But when a series only lasts 9 issues, I don't like that I miss U.S.Agent for most of a story arc. I think having him fight Draculas might be fun. And then there is Seaman, who probably deserves the spot on this mission more than Tonta. Issue 6, the one with filling art, does only feature those characters not on this mission, the ones who were left behind. So you're not exactly deprived of them. They get an issue afterwards. The smaller team of heroes rendezvous with Dynamite Destroyer at Firespit's estate. And this is my favourite part of the issue, actually. I like this long downtime moment, this mission briefing before the action. We get some interactions between all these characters, add friends and the like. And they're all written very well. I like the way they talk to each other, and there are little things like Dynamite Destroyer not respecting Jack's staff, this version of Jack's staff. Dynamite Destroyer calls him Jack Jr. And obviously it is because the last Jack staff was his lover, and he thinks this rando taking the mantle is an insult. As they fill new readers in on the plot to the Jack Staff miniseries, there is this bit where Jack Staff is homophobic, but I think we have got to look at this as an article of its time. Jack Staff isn't homophobic. Just in 2004, if a gay man was snidely calling you Jack Jr. every chance he got, maybe in 2004, maybe most people would have gotten frustrated and gone, yeah, well, you are gay, so shut up. The awkwardness continues with Firespit. She accidentally calls Jack Staff by original Human Fire's name. There is a love triangle of sorts at play. Firespit, Jack Staff and the original Human Fire. And I actually really like how the series handles it. At no point does it ever evolve into anything illicit or scandalous. Firespit remains committed and faithful to Jack Staff throughout. Firespit comes off as loving Jack Staff, but with her also having a great deal of admiration and platonic love for Human Fire. This is the closest that Firespit's relationship with Jack Staff ever gets to being on the rocks even. And you can see the cogs turning a bit. They needed a way to get Firespit alone in her bedroom so that she could be visited by an apparition of her dead son, Kenneth. Could have just had her say she had a headache and needed to go lie down. But it gave us some soap opera, and soap opera far superior to The Flash hitting his kids. Here we have another downtime moment, this one shared between Dynamite Destroyer and the original Human Fire. They both profess the likelihood that they will have to eventually shut down Plastic Man's operation. Of course, calling back to both their histories with the V people. That's something else I respect about this series. It is a common thread for me, but when a series goes above and beyond with continuity, it makes it easier for me to utterly love. I have mentioned before, the backbone of this series is based on a fucking one-off Marvel Comics Presents story starring Plastic Man. We have heaps of references to the V-People and Thunderbals. This story, obviously, is chock-a-block full with stuff from Jack's staff. Even little things that I would consider an affront to established character, John Walters becoming Captain America again, that is explained as altogether being Plastic Man's manipulations and gaslighting of John Walters. But yeah, the storm-wielding Draculas, they have captured Firespit for Baroness, and it is to be concluded. This 9-issue series represents, to me, one of those biggest examples of a comic I wish had even just one more issue. Of all the Invaders revivals, this one was the one least stuck in the past. This one was moving forward, and at the same time presenting more love and fondness for the past and for all these great characters. We are getting close to me having reviewed every issue of this series, and I don't know what I will do when I have done so, because I want to talk about it as much as possible. I give it a 7 thumbs up. Just dawned on me the perfect story they could have done. In Thunderbals, Dynamite Destroyer and Baron Zero handed over a country to the rulership of Flagman, the Captain America villain, Flagman. Fabio Nicieza eventually resolves that in Cables and Dead Pills, with Flagman being assassinated and Cables taking over that country. Plastic Man did make a cameo appearance in that. He was the one who hired Dominoes to take out Flagman. But that is something this Invaders team was born to get involved with. U.S.Agent has history with Flagman. Flagman defeated him and humiliated him the last time he was Captain America. Fuck, there is a great story there. Show how U.S.Agent has grown since then. Show some of the flaws he still has. And then we also have the original Human Fire. And he would be actively correcting one of Dynamite Destroyer's mistakes from the V-People. Dynamite Destroyer could even be back for that one. I want to read that story by this creative team.